3, 2, 1。はい。ようこそお越しいただきました。トランスレーターとして参加してます、ゆきこです。今日は、ロサンゼルスを拠点とするイベントオーガナイザーのBrownies and Lemonade から、創設メンバーでチャドにお越しいただきました。彼は肩書きとしてはクリエイティブディレクターとして活躍されています。Brownies and Lemonade についてちょっとお話しすると、2013年よりサウンドクラウドで頭角を現していたようなアンダーグラウンドのプロデューサーをですね、ブッキングしながらパーティーを開催していました。当時ブッキングしていたのはルイス・チャイルドやイカリー、ジャイ・ウォーフなど、今やダンスミュージックシーンでは一躍名を馳せている方です。才能やトレンドをいち早く見つけ出すことからテイストメーカーと呼ばれるBrownies and Lemonade は、スクエレックスやディプロまたは Z からもイベントの開催の誘いが来るほど、の存在になり上げています。彼らのイベントは当日になってみないと誰がどんなパフォーマンスをするのかわからないということで有名です。今やそのネームバリューの高さから、ラインナップを明かさずにもチケットが即完売するんですね。ロサンゼルスのウェアハウスでのライブから、またハウスパーティーから始まって今やアメリカ中だけでもなくオーストラリアや日本でもお越しいただきました。Alright, Chad, it's time to bring you in.
Hi, how
Sorry
are
for
you?
keeping you waiting.
That was a long introduction, and
Sorry.
I can
It's hard to
understand.
keep it simple because you
Yes.
guys have done so many great things. Like,
Thank you very much. It sounded very nice. I could tell that you were saying some nice things, even though I can't speak Japanese. Thank you very
That's
much.
awesome. All right. So yeah, you can start with the introduction of yourself.
Well, my name is Chad. I'm the creative director of Brownies and Lemonade, and basically, I've been working in electronic music and events here in Los Angeles for about, well, I would say since 2007. It was kind of the time when electronic music came to Los Angeles in a very different way. I saw Daft Punk perform that year, and it kind of changed my life. So that was why I wanted to do that. And DJing and electronic music started to have a real moment. In 2012, I started working with Brownies and Lemonade, and they were doing more kind of hip hop events, local Los Angeles stuff, which then, obviously we can get into it, but yeah, and then we became more of like a local showcase and sort of a well-known kind of tastemaker show for up and coming artists. And that caught the attention of a lot of really big artists. And that in turn, with a lot of the artists that we worked with, went on to become very successful. So we created this community and this nice system that has had an impact on a lot of people and their careers. And so we continue to do a lot of stuff, especially as live shows are canceled, and we've been wanting to explore more of the interactive stuff on the internet. So it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time, even though we're in the global pandemic. An exciting time for creation and new schools of thought to continue in how we present Brownies Lemonade and electronic music to the rest of the world.
That's awesome. We want to talk about the digital mirage then, the one thing that you guys did for this pandemic. Yeah, can you tell us about like how it started?
Yeah, well, it just started kind of in a very, I don't know if it was a very like if there's a lot of myth around it or whatever. It really was a simple thing. Proximity had a tweet about wanting to throw a digital festival, and Brownies and Lemonade also had a similar thought and tweeted that as well. And Proximity and our CEO Kushan, who runs Brownies Lemonade as well with me, he connected with Proximity. We never really worked with them before, but we decided, hey, between our resources, what they do with YouTube and content delivery, and what we do with events and on the live side, we decided, well, maybe we can put together a 3-day online music festival. In this way, it hadn't really been done before in the way that we were trying to do it. So we had no idea what we were doing. It was very, we were learning, it was a learning process. We were very much kind of flying by the seat of our pants and taking it one challenge at a time. But what ended up happening was the festival was extremely successful. We ended up raising $300,000 for the Music Cares Sweet Relief charity. And Sweet Relief, what it does is it gives funds directly to artists who are in need, especially during this time when they're out of work. We've also worked with other charities, so I mentioned Music Cares and so on and so forth throughout the whole process of us doing philanthropy. But Sweet Relief was the primary charity for this event. And so it ended up being a really cool event, 51 artists all across the world. We ended up having a peak concurrent of over 200,000 viewers at one point. So it was, for our first event, really a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You guys should be proud of it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It was very much reminiscent of when we first started throwing events, and we were
Yeah.
kind of just trying to get everyone together and just do something. And we haven't really been able to do a lot of those kinds of things in the live event space, because
Mm.
when you start to become more successful in live events, things become a lot more calculated. The ticket sales are very set price point, and everything becomes a lot more business oriented. So the great thing about the virtual digital space is it kind of opened up all these opportunities for people to become creative and kind of take risks in ways in which these big artists like Cascade were available to just come and DJ, out of the goodness and kindness of their own heart, and they had the free time. So it was a very unique and special point in time. I think that we'll see as the months continue to go on. Streaming is also going to become a different kind of business, and these kinds of things are going to be harder to pull off. But that first Digital Mirage and some of the other events we've done have been very organic and very, very fun in that way.
That's awesome. Thanks for telling us. Um, I want to ask, like, I don't know if it's okay to ask, but like, how much budget did you guys have for this event, or did you have like any budget?
So for this, there was actually no budget. Yeah.
Oh
So
my God.
that was the very wonderful thing about it, is that us putting the event on, um, the artists and the managers, the people doing production, everyone was working for free. There were obviously some costs in terms of production, in terms of the servers, but we were able to get some help, from sponsorship and in a
Right.
very small capacity to help cover the overhead. But for the most part, we broke even or operated at a loss on this event, because to put something like this on, just even if no one is operating on fees, there's a lot of other costs that incur that you never really think about when doing a normal event.
Wow.
But obviously, the business model and everything with the streaming is going to change. But as of right now, it's not really a financially viable sort of outlet right now for
Mm.
musicians, the way in which live concerts are.
Mhm. Interesting. How was the lineup curated?
Well, the lineup was curated kind of with proximity and their specific style. Their style is very much in the electronic world. Um, it has a pretty rich history. Proximity has been around for quite a while on YouTube. A rich history of being a very strong distribution channel for electronic music. And I would say even that they have a lot more ties even in the EDM community. Whereas Brownies and Lemonade, of course, we're known for a little bit more cutting edge or underground kind of music that's more genre mixed. So I think between the range of artists that Proximity had to work with and what Brownies and Lemonade had, there was a wide range of different kinds of talent. Everything from Alice in Wonderland and Don Diablo, these big electronic acts, but also these smaller up and coming acts as well, like Jaren, and some cutting edge acts like G Jones and Shades. So we were able to provide a really multi-layered, cool experience that I think really represented both of our brands and the kinds of music that we enjoy, but also could appeal to anyone who likes electronic music.
Right. I love the creation, like the variation of creation of artists. That was one of the best thing that I saw on the Digital Mirage, I think.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
great. I thought it was the best lineup. I mean, to be completely honest, the lineup came together in 2 weeks. So everything from the inception of the idea to gathering all the assets to basically submitting the show was 2 weeks from
Wow.
announce. So it was a lot. It was a lot to do, but the necessity drove the urgency and the commitment from everyone. So that was
Right.
really a great thing. Now we're a couple months into lockdown, and streaming has become so much more ubiquitous, and people are familiar with live stream concerts. So putting something like this together requires a lot more attention to detail, a lot more quality, because there's just so many other options out there as well now.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting. What were the takeaways from the first installation of a digital mirage? What you
Well, we
learned?
definitely made a lot of mistakes. So that was one of excuse me, the takeaways was, how do we make this thing better?
Mm,
I'm sure people who are watching this are interested in obviously music industry, sort of detailing and topics on that. So what I will say is that when we usually throw events, a lot of times what we like to do is at the end of the night, usually either myself and my CEO, my partner, and a few other people, or just me and him, will sit down and we'll recap the event, even when we're extremely tired or whatever, and kind of constructively analyze some of the things that didn't work. Maybe front of house was too hectic. Maybe certain sets weren't placed the right way during the run of show. And maybe certain things within our control at the show, whether it be, production, or whether it be guest lists, things like that, could have been better. And there were some problems that we did not foresee coming before the event, but having gone through the experience, how would we change it? Now, when we've thrown several hundred events, over time, you become so fine-tuned and precise about how to execute an event. The quality level can maintain at this high level without even really having to put much effort in it, because you have a system of checks and balances and you've been through the process so many times. So putting together an event for 2,000 people, for a lot of people would require a lot of effort and months of planning. But within the last few years, Brownies and Lemonade, we got to a point where we were able to pull off an event like that within a week, because of just being able to kind of go through the motions and the systems that we had in place. With Digital Mirage, there was nothing. There was none of that for us to refer to. So all of the things that were happening in real time, it was the first time we had ever done it. It was the first time Proximity had ever done it. So when we opened with Cascade at noon on Friday, the first day, there was already like a split second of lag, and I freaked out. I almost had a mental breakdown, because there's 40,000 people watching live, and they're all reacting in real time. Obviously it fixed itself after about 10 seconds, and everything was fine after that, but it's just little things like that you don't know unless you go through a lot of these processes over and over again, how to troubleshoot things on the fly, how to make sure that certain things are fine-tuned and precise. So that those kinds of things, and there's a bunch of them, a bunch of little things that happen that I probably won't go into detail, but that we learned. And we would talk at the end of each night, hey, it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. We were exhausted. It had been 14 hours of watching the stream, but there were some glaring errors that we needed to fix going into the next day. So we said, hey, what do we need to do? We would get on a call, Proximity, Brownies, Lemonade, the heads of our respective companies, and we talk about it. And that was extremely important, was making sure that we went into that next day, okay, this is what we did wrong today, but we're going to make sure that we fix it tomorrow. By the third day, some of the issues that were within our control did not occur again, but it required basically not sleeping for an entire weekend,
wow.
just to
It's
make
like
sure.
basically like a physical festival happening outside, like
Yeah.
no sleep.
Yeah. So, I mean, but significantly easier than throwing an actual festival, because you're moving around and you're doing all this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so many other variables and members of staff, but there is still a level of quality and control that you can, and attention to detail that needs to be executed for the product to maintain its integrity. So that was one of the things that we realized on the fly. Unfortunately, some of the mistakes were broadcast for 40, 50,000 people. So that was tough. It made us feel like, oh man, we're really amateurs, but everyone was really understanding. It was just a very just organic experience. It felt very punk rock, and it reminded us really, even though there was a lot more people watching, it had that same DIY kind of feeling as our first show. So that was really
Oh,
cool.
yeah, it must be like very scary to like open with Cascade and like what if something goes wrong and like people are expecting Cascade to play, but like the screen goes black and
Yeah. Well, it was we know now going into the future iterations of Digital
yeah.
Mirage, all the things that we were uncertain about and kind of like nervous about aren't going to be an issue.
Mm,
But of course, there's always going to be new issues that come up, so you just have to be ready. But it was the first one was fun. I mean, there was nothing that was really like too serious. It was just, when you throw events, you really, really care about how people receive it and their experience. And some of those things are just beyond your control. Some of those things, people just don't like the music, and 20,000 people leave. Um, the difference is that if you were at a music festival and 20,000 people left during your set, it would be
mm,
absolutely crushing. But that's just how it is online. It just comes
right,
in waves. So
right. That's what I like about the Digital Music Festival, I think. Um,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. So you were talking about like this next Digital Marriage. So what is going to happen? Is there
Yeah. I don't know too much because we just actually started teasing the event
mm,
about a day or two ago, actually. The event is going to be happening soon. It's, basically, uh, Digital Mirage, is like, it's going to incorporate, the second one's going to incorporate all the same kinds of variety, but it's going to focus on more live stuff. So Digital
oh,
Mirage 2 is going to have, I think, a little bit more quality um, on some of the presentation of sets. But that was something that even if we weren't going to throw the festival, you're already seeing it now with a lot of the virtual music festivals. People have had time now to like get the equipment and get certain things in place so they can make these like big elaborate shows. And so the first Digital Mirage, it was really very much like what people had at their house or their friend had, and they could borrow and kind of piece stuff together. So it had a lot more charm in that way, where it was very kind of, it was very DIY. It was very like bare bones, and some of the things were really amazing. Like, don't get me wrong. But other people didn't have access to that, so they had to be really creative in presenting something that was very different. Now we've had a few months for people to kind of gather the resources to put something really spectacular out there. So I definitely know that future Digital Mirages will have a lot more of that as well.
yeah, it's so interesting how now the artists have the production skill and they do
Yes.
whatever they want to do for their set.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, because it's accessible to anyone, and all of this stuff is available for anyone to learn, just the same way that a lot of these people learned how to produce music, a lot of how they learned how to edit videos. It's very similar. It's just a different format. So it's really cool to see how people have grown, especially in live streaming on their own channels, where you tune in at first and they're just figuring it out and it's skipping and they don't know what's going on. And then you come back a few weeks later and it's like beautiful and super clear, and the stream, it sounds great. And it just takes a little bit of time, but this will be the standard. I think that by most
Mm,
people are able to deliver content. So
mm,
yeah.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you in that. It's gonna be a new normal. That's what everyone
Yes.
say. New
Yes.
normal.
New normal. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think online festival that's like tied into philanthropy, is it gonna be a new normal?
Well, the thing about philanthropy is that, you know, we are in a time of global crisis, um, economic uncertainty, and obviously a really intense period of you know, layoffs and stoppage of work. And so I think to ask anyone for donations or money right now is kind of not necessarily, it shouldn't be the focal point, right? Because everyone is affected, from the very top to the very bottom. Everyone is affected, but you know, especially those who are working class, essential workers, people on the front lines of healthcare, artists and entertainers are obviously almost unilaterally affected across the board. But the difference is that you know, I think that providing these experiences as free, but saying that, you know, please feel free to donate if you have the means, you know, because in other situations you would have been provided this kind of art and this kind of experience by paying a premium, and by giving money, you are going to, you know, in some ways make a difference, and contribute to a great cause. But it shouldn't be something that anyone feels encouraged or obligated to do, because I myself, someone throwing the event, I'm currently out of work. All the artists for the most part are out of work, and the people watching it, I would say probably about half of them are also either unemployed or not currently working. So it's an interesting time with philanthropy to be really something that you use as a driving force. I think it's great that you have a cause as opposed to it for being a for-profit event. But you know, at a certain point, you know, we would hope that the big companies and big sponsors that have disposable, you know, revenue for you know, ads and stuff will come on board and make these festivals viable for these artists, so that they can also make money in this time, and they're not displaying their art for free, you know. And that's really the main thing for us going forward, is trying to find a sustainable model that allows the artists to get paid for their time as well.
Right. What do you think when it's gonna be like the artists start touring again, or like the physical festival come back? When do you think it's going to be? Because I know that Coachella is postponed to October, but we're not sure
Right,
it's gonna happen.
right.
Yeah,
Well,
how do you
well,
see the future or near
yeah,
future?
yeah. So, excuse me. I would say, if you were to ask me right now how I feel, I think in 2020, we probably won't be having any large scale events. I can't speak to what EDC or Coachella has planned. You know, every major you know, music property or events promoter or company has different insurances, different, you know, staffs, different agreements with their respective cities. So, you know, a lot of the things that we're going to see is that maybe festivals are taking place in one region of the country, in some countries, in other cities and areas, but in places like California and Los Angeles, where I live, there are going to be no events. And that is something that is going to create a very interesting dynamic, because, you know, we want to continue to promote people honoring the stay-at-home laws, practicing social distancing, and making sure that they can take a break and put, you know, recreational sort of entertainment and socializing and all this stuff just on pause for as long as possible, until we can kind of figure out how to safely approach these things. And I don't think that, honestly, in the larger picture, that's too much to ask. The thing is that at least for California, is in Los Angeles County, it's extremely strict. So if you were to ask me if we would throw any events in LA in 2020, unless there's a vaccine, I don't see any way that you could safely ensure the safety and health of the people going to shows. So I would say, at least in California, I don't see any like traditional events or concerts happening the way that we are used to them until next year.
Right.
Uh, I think that touring will resume sometime next year, hopefully with a vaccine as well. And I think that we'll start to see things kind of resume the way that we, like, we're used to them, like going to a festival, going to a concert, probably going into 2022, if you were to ask me. And I don't have any sources or no one knows, but
Right.
if you were to ask me right now, that's what I would say.
Right.
So, but I think that it's a good period of time. Obviously it's terrible. It's like, of course, I mean, we want to do shows. I want to throw shows. Some of the biggest shows of my life were canceled this year. I was supposed to also go to Japan for the Olympics. I've been
Oh
on
no.
vacation. Yeah. And we were also in talks to do a show in Tokyo around that time as well. So, I wanted to do all that stuff. That's stuff that I really enjoy, and was something I was really looking forward to. But now that we understand the severity and the weight of what's going on, you have to be responsible and just understand that, like, what the best thing that we could do right now is to just, stay put and just basically kind of make this year kind of we're going to call this year off, and then we're going to come back stronger next year. And it
Yeah.
sounds crazy, but hopefully we can find creative substitutes and other things that will allow us to still have some normalcy. But yeah, I don't think concerts are coming back in 2020.
Mm. Well, I guess this is the phase where we can learn a lot of stuff. We can just upgrade. We can be the better version of ourselves, I guess,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
come
I
back
mean,
strong in next year.
I know. I personally would love it if we could throw small shows like
Yeah.
200 or
Right.
less, but
Mm.
is there even really protocol for understanding if 200 people in an enclosed venue is
Mm.
safe? It'd have to be maybe a big venue and everyone would have to be standing 7 feet from each other. But
That's weird.
yeah, at a certain point, I just feel like maybe it's just best if we take a little time off and
Yeah.
come back stronger. But I understand how difficult it is to make those decisions when there are venues, production crew, artists, bartenders, and all these people who are going to suffer when there is no, source of income in their field. So,
All right. So I want to switch the topic to Brownies and Lemonade in general from the
sure.
digital festival. Um, so when we look at the lineup of your events, it's so obvious that you guys are the taste makers of the industry, like you told us. So how do you come up with the lineups, or how do you like curate lineups, and how do you find those talents?
Well, like when I came from a background as a DJ, and that's how I got started doing electronic music and shows, was by DJing. And so obviously part of being a DJ is always digging and finding new music and being having the new hot stuff that no one has heard yet. And that's always just been something that is just part of my routine. So um, also Kush, who runs Brownies Lemonade, and a few other members of our team are very up to date on like new trends and things that are happening, that we start to see kind of bubble up, like little pockets of the internet where we see kind of cool things happening. And we like to be aware of those things because in the past, so many of those kinds of little scenes we invested in and got in and met the people and became friends with them, and they became these great things. So I could give you a million examples, but for instance, trap music was something that was really big, and it's kind of like what got us really pretty popular, was electronic trap. And when we first started, a lot of these guys were really big, and they were way beyond reach. Flostradamus and Bauer and R.L. Grime. But then we started to invest and work with like the next generation of trap artists. And these artists were incorporating like new kinds of elements, melodic elements, and it started to become like future bass and then some kind of club music. And before you knew it, there was a whole new generation of creators. So that's why you mentioned Nikali and Sam Gelliatry and Jai Wolf and Lewis the Child. These artists then were like the next wave of artists that you would see on music festivals, and they came up through our system. So really, when they started to become friends and sign record deals and become close with Skrillex and Diplo and these bigger artists, we were also included within the conversation of people of that generation as well. So now that we've become established as like a tastemaker or a cultural showcase within electronic music, it's our responsibility now as being established in the community to go back and find the next wave of young artists and even young promoters that we can help. And I mentor about 40 or 50 artists, you know, like just checking in with them on the daily or, you know, on the weekly, or if they want to text me or whatever, or send me new music. And that's one way that I'm able to kind of keep up to date. A lot of these artists I can't even really book. They're not really big enough yet. But you know what I'm saying? Like they really haven't gotten to the level yet where on their own they're commanding a presence. Now we still give spotlight to a lot of these artists on some of our showcases, and maybe a support on some of these bigger shows. But it's really cool to see like these new generations and waves of music, and being involved with them. So that's just part of my job now. So that's how we're able to stay up to date with that.
Mm. Yeah. So what kind of producer stands out for you? Like who do you want to take care of, or who do you want to like mentor? What kind of producers are they?
Well, I really like, I always like supporting artists who come from, you know, marginalized groups. I've always been very supportive of Asian American artists, because I myself is Asian American, and I know that within, you know, with being Asian American, and our culture here in America, it is kind of frowned upon to pursue a creative career. So when I see young Asian American artists making really good stuff, I really try to like encourage them to continue, maybe even if their family isn't supportive or it doesn't seem like a viable career path, and try to give them some knowledge on, you know, how to, you know, pursue your art and your craft, but also have like stable income and like, you know, a steady, you know, day job or whatever it takes, but not giving up on that path. But anyone who comes from, you know, different walks of life that you're not normally seeing represented in electronic music is really important for me. But at the end of the day, also the quality of the music is the thing that matters most, and you know, the personalities are also entwined with that. But it doesn't matter what the person looks like or where they come from. You know, the music is what really speaks. Before you even see what someone looks like, you hear the music a lot of times on Spotify, or you'll be walking past the stage and you'll just hear the music going in the distance, and you'll walk up and you're like, what is this? And you don't know who it is, but it drew you in, you know? So that's the power of music, is it can kind of break down your bias, and it transcends race and any sort of category that we give other human beings. So yeah, that's what I try to look for with young artists, are people who are very unique and confident in what they're doing, because I think that generally that gravitates a lot of that same positive energy in people who feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right. When you're building a relationship, like close relationship with them, what is like the most important thing for you? Like, is there anything that you think that that's like the most important?
well, yeah, the most important thing I try to tell artists who are really starting to have some success is
Mm.
try to let them know that they should not become swayed or, you know, affected by the industry
Mm.
and by people who, you know, are complimenting them or trying to ride their success as well. The problem is that there's a lifestyle within the nightlife and electronic music industry that just is kind of secondary, and a lot of it is drinking and partying and doing drugs and a lot of other things, and that's just kind of the culture. And when I meet someone who is, you know, 19, 20 years old, and they have so much ahead of them and so much promise, I really try, from my own personal experience, but also so many stories that I've seen, try to encourage them to stay on their path of just focusing on their music and their craft and not getting caught up in the secondary lifestyle stuff, because that stuff will always be there, you know? But when you're young, when you're at that age, you have a lot of time, and you have a lot of vitality and ability to do things that when you get older, it becomes really difficult to do by life responsibility, bills, and all these things. Obviously, don't get me wrong, there's people who are young who have a lot of life responsibilities as well, and they have to juggle. But I really just try to tell people, young artists especially, like, just cautionary tales, and I try to give them some advice on how not to get caught up, because I've seen so many people, unfortunately, have their careers derailed by the wrong business decisions, the wrong people that they invited into their lives who screwed them over, and basically just a destructive lifestyle caused by the scene. So, I think that there needs to be a lot more positive discussion about how to live a clean lifestyle, or, maybe moderate a little bit more. And I think that a lot of the people that I talk to who are young already feel that way. I think the young generation is maybe not as much into partying as my generation, but and it's always nice to see that too. So.
Right. So you obviously seen like a lot of things that you didn't want to see in the industry, but what are the lessons? What were the lessons that you got for like for this past years that you've been working in the industry?
Mm. Yeah, well, one of the things is definitely like, when you start to pursue music and maybe throwing events or whatever, you can't be motivated by money. Money is something that, like, really with events especially, does not ever come in volume. Um, and it's something that you have to continually reinvest in to make the next event better. The other thing I learned is to not get caught up on the last event that you threw as being an indicator of your success. If you threw a party and it was really amazing, well, now you have momentum, and you have to follow it up with something just as good or better to keep the momentum going. But if you also threw like a really bad event, you have to like do another event just to keep the ball rolling, and it'll only get better from there. Um, I think a lot of times you can become complacent in your temporary success, and it prevents you from continuing to have a high work ethic. And that's what I see a lot of times, where people um, stop innovating and stop taking risks, and they become, I think, a little bit more comfortable with the level of success that they have, or something that's working for them. And that's no judgment, but for longevity in this, to make it a career, you have to continually be pushing the envelope and inventing new things to maintain your growth. Because at the end of the day, not everyone is going to be willing to go to electronic music shows for more than a few years. So every few years, you have to bring in a new audience, and you have to endear a new crowd to what you're doing, and you have to invest in the next wave of talent. You have to invest in the next wave of music fans.
Mhm.
So that's something I've learned over the years. I've seen a lot of people who were like 22 years old who were like, I'm too old to go to your shows now. And I'm 31. So I was like, okay. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of like changeover. But if you want to make it a career, it really requires that. And that's what I want to tell people is, don't get into it for the money. The money will come as a result of years of hard work. So.
I feel like in Japan it's still well alive. Like EDM scene is still big and well alive in here. From someone in LA perspective of someone in LA, what do you think about Japanese music industry if you have like any knowledge of it?
Yeah, I love what I know about Japanese music. I've always been into J-pop, and sort of a lot of the aesthetic qualities of Japanese pop, Perfume, Kyari Pamu Pamu, and a lot of I admire, because I am Japanese myself. I admire Japan. I feel a connection to Japan. Um, it's really interesting. I talk about this with my Japanese friends, but Japan has such an important cultural presence in America. The food is extremely popular. The anime and manga and culture side of media on that end is so well represented across the board. People love all kinds of Japanese imports. But music is one of the things from Japan that has yet to have really a transcendent moment in America. not the same way that K-pop and Korean music has had a moment to some degree, or Latin music has like a very strong presence in America. I think the reason why is that there is a stronger language barrier and cultural barrier between Japanese music and American music. And I think um, Korean pop uh, emulates and sort of incorporates a lot of elements that are borrowed from American culture and sort of assembled. The same way that American, media takes East Asian influences as well on our own media. But for some reason, Japanese music has still yet to really break through in the mainstream or in the larger consciousness here in America. So that's one of the things that, I'm interested in helping kind of grow as well. Um, you know, Still the biggest artist that came over from Japan is Hatsune Miku. So, it's that's but that has a lot to do with what I said about the culture of anime and manga being so strong, the subculture. But as far as music, I do think that there's so much great stuff that I know about in Japan that I wish had more popularity here. But I think maybe it just might take the right artist to really open up the floodgates, the same way that a lot of the pioneers of J-pop, K-pop were able to kind of break the doors down. And there were some J-pop artists who were also very popular in the 90s, but it's all varied. But I think that there will be a time very soon that we see a lot more Japanese artists represented. We already had a few Japanese artists on the Coachella lineup before they rescheduled, but we had two huge Japanese artists on the bill, so that would have been really big.
Right.
Hopefully they'll perform in October.
Hopefully, yeah. Seriously. Is there, this is like a random question, but is there any like Japanese artists, could be dance music artists or anybody that you personally like?
Japanese artists?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I really love Masayoshi Mori. Masayoshi is a good friend of mine, and all the members of Trekkie Tracks, Car Painter and Seimei and all everyone in that crew. I love them. I actually signed Masayoshi Mori to Fool's Gold Records when I was working at Fool's Gold. So I always have a very close part of my heart with that crew. We actually brought them to America and did the first Trekkie Tracks show in Los Angeles. I love artists like Banvox. Kyrian has been here for a while here in America, and she's great. We also love who are some other Japanese artists? I was just thinking.
Have you heard of Alan Mock?
Yes, Alan
Yeah.
Mock, yes, and also I was gonna say we got KZ Live Tune to perform here when we did the Hatsune Miku after party. So we've done a few after party shows for Hatsune Miku out here in Los Angeles. So yeah, there's really great, and that's a great thing about Porter Robinson, excuse me, and some other artists here in America who really put on for Japanese culture and artists. That's a really important thing. So when we did the Secret Sky Festival with Porter, you saw a really great representation of Japanese artists on the lineup. And that was really, I think, a breath of fresh air, and it was really cool.
Yeah, I really hope Japanese music or Japanese artists can just grow in first LA and then like go to the overall United States and then to the world.
Yeah, me
Really
too.
hope.
Me
Yeah.
too. I think it's
Yeah.
going to happen soon.
Yeah. I strongly believe so too. Yeah, that time's gonna come.
Yes.
All right.
I love your shirt, by the way. I just
Thank
really
you
very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's from like, was it last year?
Yeah, last year.
Miami?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, it feels like a long time ago.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That show was one of the like, oh my God, that
I
was
actually
crazy. The lineup was.
I'm gonna take this down off my wall. Let's see here. So I have the flyer from World in Kyoto.
Oh, look at that. The one that I missed.
Yeah. This is actually the flyer for their club. So
it's funny you kept it.
Yeah, this is like very important for me. So shout out to World in Kyoto. They had the best staff. They were so accommodating.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, hopefully next year when the Olympics are postponed, you can come over here
Yeah,
make the
I don't
trip
doubt it. I
happen.
think it'll happen soon.
Good.
I've been meaning to go for so long just for
Mm,
vacation.
mm-hmm.
So, my I have really strong, ancestry in Japan. My great grandfather was a samurai, and my family's from Yamaguchi. I've never been there before, so I obviously want to go down there. And I just feel like a very strong tie to Japan. So whatever I can do in the next couple years to continue to work with Japanese artists in the intersection and bring American artists to Japan, that's what I want to do because it's so fun. And I think there is a good, healthy exchange there.
I'm counting on you.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We can wrap up the interview around here.
Cool.
So yeah, thank you so much. ありがとうございます
Yeah,
for
thank you for
joining
having
us.
me. Appreciate it.
All right.